Hello there, this is Menghini, and here to show my coursework for graphics design. So, let's run the program. Let me wait a moment as it loads up quite a lot of big textures. We're actually running it in release mode. And there you go. Look at that. Got a nice starship. Our frame rate actually runs around 80 frames per second, but the screen capture's freaking it out a little bit, so I'm just going to turn that off. But, let's just walk around a little bit. You can see we've got a movable camera. Moving around. Going up, going down, all around. Works nice. Now it works nice. We have our frame rates displayed, as you saw. We got a nice skybox. Look at that view. Oh, very pretty view. Look at that view. No edges. You can't notice the edges. We have edgeless skybox out there. One thing to note, as I grab some code, is, if we scroll over to where I do this, everything is in scene nodes. Absolutely everything is a scene node, except for the skybox. We've got our root scene node. We call update on that. Updates everything below it. Call draw on that. Draws everything below it. So adding to the root, we add some UFOs. We add some terrain. In fact, we add 5 times 5 terrain, so 25 terrains. Is that right? Yeah. Then we add a bunch of fireworks, and then we add a bunch of glass nodes. Or at least one, just to show off transparency in a minute. Let's go back to the UFO. Got a nice UFO here. Well, let's jump straight to him. Our UFO, in his constructor, he actually adds to himself a few children of his own. He's got an alien on the bridge. I can show you that later. Dome on top. You may have noticed the blue thing. Oh, a light node for a spotlight, and then a bunch of lights around. And then a few just to try and make the engines glow a little bit. So, there's that. Now then, let's go back to this. As you can see, there's a very low amount of ambient light in our shader. Initially take the, when we do our addition at the very end, we add up our light sources, and our ambient light is set to a really small amount. We also have diffuse, specular, and attenuation. If you look over distance, this light actually fades, as you may see. In terms of diffuse, this is actually our diffuse lighting. In terms of specular, here's specular. This is the light that is shining directly at the camera via the normals. Then, let's go back. If you look over here, we have many, many lights. That was the point of the project, was to deliver as many lights as possible. Now, these aren't just normal lights. We actually use deferred rendering to render this many lights. There are 77 per starship, and there are 100 on the ground overall. I have 4 per terrain, and if you notice, we added the same terrain 25 times, and it comes out with 100 lights. And this terrain is actually repeating, so when I place them back to back, you can't notice anything. And you may notice if you really look close, but let's ignore that. This is just a simple test. So, let's go further. Dynamic lights. As you can see, this is not just a screenshot. Those lights are fading in and out. If you look down here, got nice blue lights. Well, let's throw some red in there. Ah, look at that. Pushed a key, added a bunch of red. I can take the green out, or take some blue out, whatever dynamics you want. So let's say we want a yellow light. We can make a yellow. If you want a purple light, throw in a bunch of blue, get rid of the red. Completely dynamic, you have complete control over this. Let's go back to the color I prefer. Now then, furthermore, you can increase and decrease the radius of the lights, going down, going up, whatever you like. Alright, sounds good. Plenty of dynamic lighting going on here. Now that we have that, let's see. Oh, our scene graphs. If you notice everything's a scene, well, we're actually doing some frustum culling, which I will show you in a moment. When things are off screen, they are no longer being attempted to update or draw. They're just there. We're not doing anything with them. We're just culling them out of all our calculations, saving a lot of processing time. Let me go back. There they are again. So, let's go with our post-processing blur effect. If you look closely, you notice a nice blur to it. In fact, that is the exact blur we put. It's a nice little effect. And to be more specific about it, this blur effect, I take these lights right here. If you see the really blue icosphere, it's a sphere, but we kind of mess with it to not be a complete sphere. It makes it easy on the calculations. I take that, I write under a buffer when I draw those, that, hey, there's a light here. And then after that, I go into it, and we blur that area. We blur it 50 times. And we'll go over to the code, show you just what's going on. If you notice, we draw our lights. We actually draw under a buffer called bloom text that, hey, it's there, using our shader. And then once we have that, we know we can do our 50 blur passes, and we're good to go. Now, when we do the texture we're using, if you notice here, is 1/4 the size of the screen. That means that when we did our calculations with the full screen, which I did initially, our blur passes, we have to blur a lot of pixels because we have a much bigger screen. Well, it really lagged. It dropped my frame rate down to 20. It wasn't worth it. But since it's a blur effect, well, we can use a smaller width and height of our screen, and take that, blur it. As long as we have our pixel size set correctly, we'll be fine. And then we set it back to the normal and put it to the screen. And by using this by blurring the smaller texture, you save a lot of frame rate. A lot of frame rate. And in the meantime, you really don't notice much of a difference. If you look really close, you start to see it starts to pixelate a little bit. But that's alright. Fact is, we saved all that frame rate. So let's go back to the code. Let's go with dynamic lighting. Well, if we scroll down to our render scene, we draw the scene. We draw all our opaque objects. We draw a light. We take the depth buffer from our opaque objects, just so we know where we're at. We, whoa, completely skipped over the build node list. This is where we do our frustum culling. When we build the node list, if we scroll down to it, oh goodness, did not set this up right. Alright, build node list, we say, is our node inside the frustum? Everything is a node, so we know where it is, even the lights. And we say, is it inside the frustum? If it is, then put it in a list. According to it, you got opaque objects, transparent objects, light nodes, fireworks, and spotlights. So we can treat them all differently. Now then, once we have those lists, we sort them. Our opaque objects go front to back, so we can take this Z testing. The computer automatically does that. At least that's what we're told. Supposedly there's some magic behind the scenes of it doing some Z testing. And so it'd be nice to have that going on. And then we sort our lights, we sort our transparent objects back to front, because that's what you need to draw them, so that your transparency works correctly. Now that we have all that sorted out, we draw our scene. Our draw scene goes into that list. I'm not going to go to it right now, but it goes into this list that we built here of all of our opaque objects and draws into the screen. The lights takes a depth buffer from here, figures out what lights are still on screen from that, and draws them. Then we combine the scene. When I say draw lights, I'm talking about drawing the lights, these lights. Getting our specular and diffuse lighting going on. Our combine actually combines them using our combined shader. Over here we got our ambient light set really low, got our diffuse light, or specular light, add it all up, and there you go. Going back to here, that's where the combine happens, where we combine the scene and the lights. Then we draw our fireworks. Then we draw our light objects. That's actually the physical ball you see here. I didn't want it messing with my lighting calculations, as the light is physically inside of that ball, so I just drew them afterwards. I actually make the bloom effect, that little blur, after that. Then at the very end, we draw our transparent objects. And then, just for kicks, we got our frame rate right there. And then we're drawing this into a bunch of buffers, and at the very end we have to draw that buffer into our main buffer. We're storing them in textures, passing them along through frame buffers. At the very end we gotta set that texture to the actual frame buffer, and then swap the buffers. That's the very long explanation of how this program is working. But if you notice, we also have our fireworks. These are actually particles. They're actually using a geometry shader, which we didn't really touch on, but we had a nice little example to work off of, so I went with that and made a nice bunch of fireworks. They have random colors, random lifetimes, random radiuses, what have you. I really like them, you know. Then we have transparency. Maybe you're wondering what this giant ball is. It's a giant transparent ball. If we notice, all of our lights work straight through it. When you draw transparent objects at the very end, you're good to go. Let's see. Obj Mesh Loading with textures. If you notice, these are actually, we have an Obj Mesh loader going on. And I'm loading up all the vertices and texture coordinates of these giant starships, as well as these lampposts. You notice they're more than just a stick in the ground. And then we load up a bunch of textures. That's what took a little load time at the beginning for this giant starship. Now, something to note, because we're using scene nodes, if you note here, I create a starship OBJ mesh, and it's inside of UFO. UFO is known, did I skip it? Hopefully not. Is known by the renderer. Now then, this is one mesh. One mesh has all of those vertices inside of it. With those vertices there, when I make my UFO nodes, if you notice, we pass it UFO, that UFO mesh. When we go into the UFO node, see the mesh? This mesh equals mesh. And pulling it over, we see that this mesh is just a mesh. So we actually have a pointer to our mesh, and all three of those UFOs are pointing to the same mesh. This. Doing the same thing with the lamps, same thing with the terrain, same thing with everything else. This makes a really nice effect as you save quite a lot of memory, because now, instead of having to load up all of these vertices 3 times, you just load them up once. You point all of your UFO objects, which I want them all to look like this, so I point it all to the same mesh. I save space, I save time, everything looks great. If we look a little closer, we can see my water. It's not the best in the world, but it's nice and simple. It's actually got a sine wave function to it. Whoop, went down to the earth, so let's not do that. And a sine wave to it, so it gives a little feel to it, nice and textured. Just kind of repeats a little bit. But it's nice and transparent too, so you can see straight through it. If you notice, our lighting effects work very nice with it, as the spotlight went by. If we just look at one of these starships as they come by, we'll eventually get here. Can look at the big one for now. We notice a nice spotlight right down there. Look at that. It's actually originating from that light that you may see right there in the middle of the ship. That looks very nice, very nice. All of these are point lights, by the way, except for the big spotlight, which we do a few calculations within our shader to actually round that to be like that. Now then, if we go up here, we can see our one last little bit before we complete this. See, oh, what is that? Hey, what do you know? There's an alien inside here. Whoa! It's actually a Hell Knight from the Doom series. And what do you know? He's leading the invasion. Ha ha ha. Look at him go. And that, my friends, is my graphics coursework. So thank you very much for watching. And stop.